at some ideas of exercises and positions you can work on to help your child achieve standing. We'll also look at the transitions from sit to stand and stand to sit to see how you can facilitate that movement for your child as well. So we talked to start with about the importance of tactile stimulation for feet, and that your children should be receiving lots of information through their feet during their early development. So really important when we're doing play on their backs to make sure that you're getting that hand to foot play. Just stroking. We've got this little piggy you went to market, it's always a good one. And everybody clap feet, lots of foot clapping. I like foot clapping. I just think that gives a lot of information through the feet. Two hands, opposite hands, feet together, this little piggy, anything just to get some tactile information through those feet. Also, when you're supporting your child in standing, and they're still needing a lot of support, make sure you're doing it on lots of different surfaces. I mean, here we've got a really sort of bobbly rug, so that's giving a lot of information about that floor surface. You might have a hard tiled floor or wooden floor. Practice on that because that's a different feeling again. Also the cot mattress is a really nice one because that's a bit squidgy, and that's a different surface again. All the sofa cushions, different surface, and obviously on you. So you're quite lumpy and squashy. So just getting lots of different feedback through the feet. So remember to stand on lots of different surfaces. That's really useful. Oh, and also one that I really like is the 1990 sitting. So either you can be sitting on your leg with feet on the floor. Of course, stability is not great, is it? So just getting weight through feet, rocking side to side, or you can do in this position. As long as you sit on the floor, you can have, my thigh's a bit big for this baby, but you can fix feet with this leg, have them sitting on the other leg, and you know you've got weight going through their feet. So if your child is resistant to have feet down or isn't showing any inclination to stand, really get some weight through their feet, and the sitting position is really nice, really useful. Whilst we're in this position, you can, that's a bit low. Let me get my slightly higher box, which is slightly heavier. Okay, so in the sitting position, putting toys on here just to really motivate your child, just to get them up into standing. So you can see I'm just using my knee slightly just to bring them up into that standing position, if they're not showing any inclination themselves to do it. So just take a little bit of weight through their knee and back down again. It's a nice activity. Lovely. Okay, so if you're working on the supported standing, think about different surfaces your child can be leaning on as well. So not just supported by you. You can use the therapy ball. It's a really nice, I didn't bring mine with me today, but that's a really nice height that they can lean forwards, lean against the therapy ball. You can move the therapy ball a little bit. So their ankles are being mobilized, they're changing the weight going through their foot and their ankle complex, so that's a nice one to do. So leaning forwards onto a therapy ball for standing is lovely. Obviously leaning on you as an adult for support, different positions, leaning on you, all different positions for leaning. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really key at this stage of development to have lots of different surfaces around. Like I say, coffee tables, footstools, toy boxes, chairs, sofas, all provide different heights and all provide your children with different experiences. Looking at sofas, here you can see this sofa is, it's not bad for this baby, sort of chest level, not bad at all. But to start with, when you are working on the pull to stand, that might be a little bit high. So often with sofas, it's very easy to just flip up the cushion, and you've immediately got the perfectly sized surface to do the pull to stand on. So just very often when I'm in houses looking for a surface, it's often the sofa with the cushion up that gives the perfect height for this sort of movement. So just have to make sure you've hoovered under your cushions. You find all sorts of things under there. But yeah, lifting up the sofa cushion is a really useful height and a good trick. Also standing with their back against a surface is really nice. So I'll pull that cushion down again. So you can lift them up. So they're standing here. They'll need lots of support. Because like I said, a child can't stand independently completely straight up for quite a long time. Because those glute muscles just aren't strong enough. So just standing against a surface, so you've got nice eye contact, you can be quite motivating in this position, lots of singing and talking, but that's a nice position to be in as well. So it doesn't matter if your child is lying back a little bit, that's okay to have support behind them, it's just weight is going through their feet. If your child is having difficulty achieving standing, because either their tone is just too high, too low, or there's some difficulty with joint flexibility, your physio will probably suggest some aids to help you with standing. It is essential that your child stands and takes weight through their hips for their hip development. So by about one-ish, your child should be taking weight through aligned hips. The hip is a ball and socket joint. So this is your pelvis and that's the top of your thigh bone. And basically the pelvis is quite flat to start with. And you've got weight going through the pelvis with the ball of your femur bone, and gradually that will model, you see my hand, that will model around to give a nice cup shape and have a nice stable joint. So if you haven't got that weight bearing activity, that pelvis, or the cup that it sits in, can become, well, it won't form a cup shape, it will stay quite flat. And if a child doesn't weight bear and spends a lot of time not weight bearing, and usually some abnormal muscle tone as well, that can result in some dislocation of the hip. So we don't want that. It is important that your child is weight bearing. So your physio might suggest leg gaiters. And leg gaiters are great. They're basically like big cricket pads. So it's like a sheet of material that's got metal struts down it to keep it rigid. And you literally just wrap it around your child's leg and it basically stops knee bending. So if you're working on standing, it's basically just another pair of hands. So you don't have to worry about keeping knees straight. You can support maybe at the pelvis or at the trunk, wherever's needed, but you know those knees are straight. So you are going to get some aligned weight bearing through legs. That's something that might be mentioned or might be useful to you. Also, if your child is really struggling with standing to start with, a standing frame might be useful, which is basically like lots of pairs of hands. It will just support knees, hips and chest if required, just to allow that weight bearing through legs for hip development. Weight bearing and aligned standing is so important for so many ways. So hip development primarily at this stage, but it's also good for digestion, to be in a nice upright position, and it helps bowel activity. It also stimulates bone growth, so stops brittle bones. That's really important. Lots of reasons why children should stand. So standing frames are something that we do give out to children who are struggling to stand independently themselves. So just a quick one on standing frames, just in case there's anyone out there who's at this stage. You can have supine standers, which basically your child goes in on their back to start with, and then they come up into standing that way. And those are for children who have a lot of difficulty with head control. So it just means that they can lean back against a surface and they haven't got too much gravity acting on them when they're in standing. You can have prone standers where they're tilted forward slightly. Basically, that's when they're having to work on their head control and lift their heads up, but everything else is supported in standing. Yes, there's some weight going through the tummy, There's a lot of weight going through feet. And then there's the upright standers. So there's just the very basic standers that give support, usually around knee, pelvis and chest, just in an upright position, just to make sure children are getting weight bearing through their legs. So that's just a little bit on standing frames. Another lovely idea I've seen recently for a child who isn't particularly motivated to stand, and he was quite a low tone child. The parents bought you can get these sort of temporary handles with suckers on that you can attach onto either tarred surfaces or glass. So it's just a handle that comes out with a sucker on either end, and they put it on their patio window, just about this height. So their child absolutely loves standing at the patio window. He holds on to the bar, doesn't need any support, happily stand there, watch the birds, watch everything that's going on in the garden. That really motivates him, and that's a really nice idea actually. So they're quite secure, just get them online, but that's something I saw recently which was lovely for standing, because he's not so interested in standing up against the sofa, but to be able to look visually out of the window really helped. So that was a nice idea. Play tables are good as well. You can get tables that are designed for sort of toddler height, with lips on the side so that the toys don't fall off. So if you're really having to work hard on standing skills, then play tables are lovely, because they're the right height, and it's a safe zone for the toys to stay. So they're always really useful as well. So quickly looking at transitions of movement. So I talked about high kneeling. This is the high kneeling surface. So getting your child into the high kneel position, which here, my little fella's popping through his arms. So this is the position you want. So bottom is up. They start off down, and what you're trying to do is get that hip extension in high kneeling. So they can be leaning forward on the surface, that's fine, don't mind at all. So going from low kneel to high kneel is a really nice activity. So getting them to reach up from that position for toys is lovely. Getting that bottom working hard. And then what we need to do is just put toys slightly out of reach to either side. So they're beginning to transition from one side to the other. And you can see how that will actually develop skills needed for cruising and walking. So you can do that at the same time. So it's going from low kneel to high kneel and reaching either side, and a little bit of rotation as well you can bring in, get them to reach for toys. But high kneeling is really important. So facilitating the movements from floor up into high kneeling. I did whiz through them quickly earlier, I'll just repeat them. So for a low surface, you might want to go for a side sit position, put a toy or something on that surface, something that motivates your child. So you're taking one arm, taking two arms, allow your child to twist around up into that high kneel position. And at that point, their bodies will, on a low surface, will be forwards. They might push up through both legs themselves. That's okay, but if you're specifically working, if it's because of increased tone and you want to separate the legs and not let them work at the same time, which is often the case, what you want to do is just take the weight over to one side. So you're releasing the weight going through this leg. Once this leg is free, just bring it forwards and up. And then what I tend to do is just stabilize around the hip, because like I said, at the moment, at this stage, they're not going to be pushing through this hip, they're going to be pushing through their arms, but they will need your help to stabilize that hip. So you're not pushing through that hip, you're just stabilizing it in an aligned position. So you're keeping that hip and knee and foot in that position so that your child can push up with their arms and bring their other leg through. Okay, so I'll do that on myself. Easier to see, I think. So from the side sit position, here, bringing arms over, going from side sitting so you can guide them by the hips into that high kneel position. So you're now in high kneeling, and what you want to be doing is taking the weight over onto one knee, which releases this knee so that you can bring that one through. You then want to just sort of stabilize it so it's not going out like this or in like this. It's aligned. Just hold it in that position so your child can then push up through their arms into standing. So that's going up into standing. From standing into sitting. So standing in this position. So the child will move diagonally away from the surface. They'll increase their base of support. They will drop pelvis backwards. So all the weight is going through that left hip. This leg's quite straight and they will drop down into sitting. Okay, so from standing, it's reaching away from the surface, leg out, pelvis back, dropping down into sitting. So to practice that, you're going to be putting toys down here basically. So you're going to break it down just to the reaching to start with. So something here that motivates your child to reach, and then perhaps reach a bit further. So hopefully the leg will come out. And if you've got a toy that's quite low down, you can practice just going that squatting. Can't really do it on my little fella again, so I'll show you on me. So if I'm standing up, reaching down for something, just that squatting movement. You do straight squatting is still useful, but if they're reaching down for something, it's just that bending of the knee. So they're still holding onto the surface, but they're just practicing bending, straightening. And you can see how my hips are moving backwards and I will go into sitting. So it's that reaching down. Lots of reaching at this stage is really useful. I think that has covered most of what we've been through today. So lots of tactile stimulation to feet, lots of supported standing, thinking about not just you supporting, but supporting using a therapy ball, leaning against different surfaces, footstools, coffee tables, sofas with cushions up. Also cots, you'll find, I didn't mention cots. You often find that children find it much easier to pull to stand up on their cot, and that's usually when parents find they've done it for the first time. They go into the room and your child is standing there looking at you and think, how did that happen? And it's quite nice, they can pull up on the side of the cot. And obviously that the squashy mattress underneath is quite forgiving. So that's nice as well. If there's something vertical for them to pull up on the cot side is often a useful thing to practice. So standing on lots of different surfaces, carpets, rugs, squashy surfaces, hard surfaces, all sorts of different surfaces. Just bearing in mind the importance of standing and how we need standing for hip development. And there's lots of things out there that can help, the gaiters, the standing frames. You might want to talk to your physio about shoes and footwear. If your child is unable to maintain a flat foot position, a stable flat foot position for standing, then standing is just going to be difficult. You need to have a stable base to stand on. So even if your children have low tone hypermobility and their feet are rolling over and need stability, or it might be that they've got really increased tone and they tend to go up on tippy toes, so they haven't got that stable base. Footwear or sometimes splints can help to keep a stable foot position. And it might be that these are only used to start with when your child's learning to stand, and as they develop the skills of standing, then you can take some of these supports away, but just get them able to stand. Like I said, if a child has high tone, they're learning a new skill, then that high tone can become much more of a problem until they've got more confident in the skill, and then it will reduce. So it could be something that you use just while they're learning a new skill, but there are things out there. And obviously working on the transitions between standing, floor to stand, stand to floor, thinking about the different heights, but remembering it's very much upper body led to start with, and the legs are quite passive. So it's a lot about strengthening up this upper body, even though we're looking at standing. Any questions?